Well, hey there, writer. Welcome to the Resilient Writers Radio Show. I'm your host, Rhonda Douglas, and this is the podcast for writers who want to create and sustain a writing life they love. Because, let's face it, the writing life has its ups and downs, and we want to not just write, but also to be able to enjoy the process, so that we'll spend more time with our butt in chair getting those words on the page. This podcast is for writers who love books and everything that goes into the making of them. For writers who want to learn and grow in their craft and improve their writing skills. Writers who want to finish their books and get them out into the world so their ideal readers can enjoy them. Writers who want to spend more time in that flow state. Writers who want to connect with other writers to celebrate and be in community in this crazy roller coaster ride we call the writing life. We are resilient writers. We're writing for the rest of our lives, and we're having a good time doing it. So welcome, writer. I'm so glad you're here. Let's jump right into today's show. Hey there, writer. Welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Writers Radio Show. So today I'm here with Diane Shotton, and Diane is the author of Marty's Vow and the Dictograph Case. We're going to be talking about the Dictograph Case today. She writes historical fiction that makes unknown people unforgettable. She spent 4 decades unearthing true stories behind her novels. She's a native of Covington, Kentucky, and she lives in Arizona where she writes full time. So hey, Diane, welcome.
Hey, Rhonda, thanks for having me. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. So, obviously, I read this because I did some editorial work on it, but tell me about the background to this story, how this story came about, how you decided. And I see you've got your middle name, Wahn, here. So tell me the background of how the story ended up being written.
Okay, well, this is back in 1999. I was researching my family history in a local library, and a friend, a very, very distant cousin, was with me, and we were looking up this one name, and I saw this story in the newspaper where we were looking for the name, and it was about this 7 men were accused of being committing treason during World War I just for talking amongst themselves in a shoe shop. So they ended up going to jail, a big long trial, going to jail, and I just still couldn't believe how that went down. But in further research, World War I was a lot of people who were anti-German, particularly since we were fighting the Germans, and it was a very insular community who decided, under the leadership of a few prominent men, that they would shut down all anti-American activity in this town, which, and the how they did it was through what the dictograph was one way, where they were in the shoe shop listening without the people knowing it, and then they took those transcripts to the court, and then the men were tried, and three men ended up going to jail. They were 65 and older. They were old men, not young men, and prominent members of the community. So very odd way to manage this. And so I took the story, and I vowed 25 years ago, I got to write this book. I got to write this book.
Yeah.
Because it was just too unreal to be believed.
Yeah. What I loved about the book is how, and I said this to you at the time, how you wrote it like it sounds like it's of the time. It has that like Raymond Chandler detective noir kind of feel to it. There's a slow burn romance, I really loved it. So what were the biggest challenges to writing a story like this?
Well, the first challenge was deciding which point of view, and to figure out if I wanted to do it from the men who it happened to perspective. But I decided that would be, I couldn't write like a 65-year-old man, and I didn't feel like I could live in his shoes. So what I did is I used his grandson as the man who owned the shoe shop, his grandson, to tell the story. And then there was some other side stories going on with this. Olivia is the woman whose father was killed by an automobile during this whole process. So there's and the father was the attorney for the old men. So there's lots of things weaving in and out. And so I had to decide the point of view, and then I decided to do a point of view, and that I'd never done before. It's only my second book, and it was interesting to not repeat yourself in one chapter to the next, because it goes back and forth between Michael and Olivia. And then to be able to, what I really struggled with was not giving the clues over and over and over and over again. In fact, I got feedback from several people, a couple beta readers, as well as I think some of your stuff was, I keep hearing the same thing repeated. So I had to figure out, how do I cut that down so it's just said once, because the reader gets it. I wanted to make sure the reader got it, and I did it too much.
Yeah, I think that can be a hard thing, is sort of trusting the reader to pick up the clues you're laying down. Yeah. So it's based on a true story. How much did you feel that you could like feel free to fictionalize the whole thing, and how much did you feel like you had to be true to what actually happened?
That's a great question. And that's the hardest thing to do as somebody who is a genealogist and lives in the world of facts and places. It's a lot of fiction, but the essence of it is true. I tried to get across the feeling of the town was all on the side of shutting down anything German, that the town 20 years later was still feeling the ramifications from it, although that was totally fictionalized. When I went back and did a bunch of research several different ways, the town recovered and nobody ever talked about it again. So it was, and that was the other part about it that was odd, was that it just happened, it disappeared, and these people just went on with their lives without any other societal or economical repercussions. So it was strange. So I decided to make that up, that there was repercussions, and that Michael, as a journalist for the local newspaper, was going to go and uncover the what really happened and why it happened.
And he
So
pays
it
a
was
price.
probably 25% real.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
So that's sort of the core of the book, that is what really happened, and then you wove a fictional story around it. And Michael pays a price for that, for, delving into something that that the people involved don't want him to be delving into. Um, how
Right.
did you decide, when did you decide to put in the romance between Michael and Olivia?
Pretty early on, I knew that they couldn't just be, there needed to be some tension between the two
Mm,
characters. Besides
mm,
just telling each other the facts, here's what happened to me, here's what happened to me.
right,
And then, to be honest, I didn't start out with the romance. It just kind of happened. When they meet, they do a tiny little meet cute in a hallway, and there's sparks fly and all that, stuff. And I've never written romance, so it just kind of happened, and then it started to feel like it must be fate for them to work together, and therefore start having a little romance, whatever that would mean. Both of them were 35, and neither one have been married. And somebody said to me, I find that fascinating and actually illogical that somebody in the 30s who's 35 is not already married. I said,
right.
well, there's people who don't marry all the time.
It
So,
happens. Yeah, it totally happens.
yep,
So,
yep.
what is it about focusing on a true story? In your earlier book, Motty's Vow, does that also focus on a true story?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That one is
And-
more fact than fiction in terms of what
Okay.
happened in terms of events. And it's, I draw mostly from the genealogy that I've done in my family. And the particular story behind Motty's Vow was about a family that's left behind when the father goes off to fight in the Civil War, and what happens
Mm,
to them, the facts of what happens to the family, the mother, the children, etc. All was
mm,
kind of like the reason I wrote Motty's Vow was, in the end, this is a spoiler, is that the father ends up re-enlisting. He does his 3 years. He comes home. He's got 4 kids depending on him, and he reenlists. Why?
Mm,
Why
mm,
would you do that? Your wife has died. And so I wrote the book to answer that question, to be honest. And
okay.
I didn't know the answer until I almost got to the very end and figured out that he wanted to provide for his family. He thought money was the right thing because you got big bonuses when you're enlisted, and he didn't have a wife anymore, so he didn't have that tie. All he had was these kids that were also they were doing fine without me. Why come back and mess things up and give them some money and leave them something?
Right.
Yeah.
Mm. And
The tragedy The tragedy is that when he joined up, then he ends up getting injured
mm,
because he joins a regiment. The first regiment he was in was the first all German regiment in the state of Ohio. So he's a German immigrant. The language, the customs, the orders, the way that they marched, the way that they drilled, etc. And then he goes and he rejoins a unit, the 181st, which is really, really late in the war. And I believe, though I can't prove it, that because his language barrier and the way that he was a soldier in the first regiment might have had an impact on him not surviving the second.
I see. Okay. Um, Diane, as you're writing this story about, something that happened in Ellington in 1937, do you see any parallels between what's happening in the United States today? Like, were you conscious of that as you were writing it?
I was very much conscious of it. Um, the idea of free speech and that people wave the patriotism flag around left and right, and it isn't. Yeah, I had lots of trouble with trying not to get on my pedestal. I
Right,
let the book
right,
do that for me because
right.
patriotism is it's a gift and it's being used
Mm,
in the book. It's used to turn people against each other.
mhm.
100% American, because if you weren't that, then you weren't a patriot. And I see that
Right.
happening a lot again in what we're seeing in the government, the media, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the gift of historical fiction is we can kind of take a situation, look at it, build a world around it, and it kind of, for the reader, they can be swept away in the story, which, I think the Dictograph case does a great job of. And but it also there are echoes and the reader picks up those echoes. Yeah, so I love that about historical fiction. Um, this is at its heart a mystery, right? It really is
Yes.
them trying to figure out who was behind all of this, and they're threatened, progressively as they go through it. Um, and I loved the all the scenes in the bar and how they're threatened and so on. I thought that was really it kept you super engaged in the story. Did you ever have trouble with structuring the mystery at the heart of this? Or was that just clear to you from the get-go?
No, it wasn't clear. The difficulty was making the antagonist have real stakes without having a voice. So you only have and you pointed this out to me. It was really good feedback. Was that the antagonist, it's like the stakes weren't clear to the reader about why he was doing all this. And your advice was up the ante, change his position or add something to his position so that when people do find out what's gone sideways, even if it's years ago, he's got something big to lose. So I changed him from a mere attorney who's working in the city, getting new buses into the city, to somebody who was actually on the Chamber of Commerce and therefore had a very respected position within the city as well, and that affected a lot of businesses. So when he went down, he would be seen by his peers as being someone who wasn't honest or true.
Wow. So how did you talk to me about doing the research for this book. Like, just describe some of the research that you did, and how you incorporated that within the novel.
Okay. I was fortunate enough to come across several major pieces of work. One was done by a local historian in the town where this takes place, also my hometown, who wrote an entire, a huge, I don't know what the word is, chronicle about the events and what happened, and even went back into court files, et cetera. So I had a lot of the background I didn't have to dig for because it's already brought in this article. Her name was Jillian. And then another one was called Scurrilous Citizen. I almost called the book that, but nobody knows what scurrilous is. But that was another major article that not only blended what was happening in the town and what happened, but he also took the entire context of the war, what happened in other towns and cities, et cetera. So those two big pieces were kind of the framework for this and gave me the, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. And then I did a lot of research about what it was to be a newspaper journalist, what it was to be a teacher in those days. I used some of the, in my mind, I used the same city streets, but changed the names so I could place things like the bar, I knew what that was, et cetera, et cetera. And in real life, the shoe shop was literally 2 blocks from where I grew up. So I've been past that shoe shop 100,000 times. It's not a shoe shop anymore, but I've seen and I've found, I just did a lot of digging, and the internet, thank heavens, has been fantastic. So the research was funded by big articles, then a lot more digging into the details. And I see that's my rabbit hole. If I do research, I can go off, you will see me 3 hours later, and I've just found the name of the guy who came in and was a customer.
Right. And I have to say, so I'm writing a historically based something now, and gosh, that's so easy to spend 3-4 hours doing research and feel like, you've been productive,
Yeah,
but actually you haven't written anything. So how long did it take you
yeah.
to write this book?
Oh, I've been writing it for years, but the final version with Michael and Olivia, I think it took me about, I think it was 16 months. Yeah. So I think I started in, when Motty was in review, I started in July of 24, and then it came out in September of 25. Yeah. Yeah.
And you self-published. I love the cover. Who did your cover? Is that you? No.
It's a little bit of a couple of things. So I found an image online, and then I enhanced it, and then I have an artist friend. She's a senior in high school who
Well,
helped me put together some of the background, et cetera, and we worked on how things should be placed. And
yeah, it's great. It really evokes the exactly what's going on, and yeah, I love it. Love
good,
it.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So good.
covers are tough. I mean, you get a lot of criticism for covers. You
Yep.
get a lot of kudos for covers.
Yeah,
And that one was tough because it being so dark.
yeah.
I think I had to order like 3 or 4 proofs before I had
Right.
it right because it kept coming out either too dull or too bright in spots. So
Hmm. You've put further reading at the back as well as a book club discussion guide.
mhm.
So I love that idea. And how did you come up with the questions for the book club? Like, what were you thinking about when you put that together? Are you're
Well,
hoping the book club's taken on, obviously?
yes. Well, I had read that providing a book club
Mhm.
uh, is a good. I love book clubs. I don't belong to one, but because I have too much else going on. But anyway, I came up with the questions simply by looking at the overall themes and doing
Mhm.
like a section on what are the themes here. What do you see? I think one of the questions relates to what you said earlier. Do you see any parallels to what's happening today? How did the characters feel? What did you think about the way the city was against itself? How did the townspeople kind of go? But a quick story about book club. Motty's Vow has a book club notes in the back of it as well. And I have a good friend who lives in Cincinnati who read the book, just crazy raved about it, and she belongs to a book club. Last November, I showed up in person at the book club. And so I got to be the author in resident to talk about the book. And these
How fun.
women, yeah, it was a lot of fun. They even made a cake with the cover of the book on it. They were just
Aw,
it was great fun. But it was
that's,
so nice to talk about, as an author, you write the book, you get it
mm,
out there, and then you don't get to talk about it a lot unless you run into a reader who asks you questions, etc. So it was really lovely to have being peppered with questions. And then I talked about the sequel, which I'm working on right now, and I let the
oh,
cat out of the bag. And one of the women turned to me, she said, "No, you can't do that."
you can't do that.
Said,
So
you
tell me
can't
a
do that.
little bit about the sequel. This is the sequel to Motty's Vow.
Correct.
Is
Yeah.
it,
In fact,
so it's back just in the time of the Civil War or just
it's
after?
post-Civil War. It's after the Civil War. And so it takes up with the same family. But this time it tells it from Lizzie's perspective, which is the younger daughter in the family. And she starts out in an asylum, which is where she went when her father left for the war. And so now she's getting out of the asylum after 10 years, and that's a long time. She was 10 when she
Wow.
went in. She was there for 10 years, and now she's getting out. And what is the world like? What is she, how does she kind of fit in to the world? But she's got her sisters as an anchor. And then there's, again, based on true family history, I won't say mayhem ensues, but she goes through a lot of trials and tribulations during this,
Mm,
and making it period specific was very important. So trying to find it's almost like a backwards process you do. You got your basic story, and then what else is happening in the world around them that can impact our lives. So
yeah.
all you know as a historian, they were born, they married, they had kids, they died. But then shit happened that in the town or the city or the country, and weaving that into the
Oh,
conversation with the characters gives them it gives a context. It also says they had to deal with this stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
it deepens our understanding of who they were and how they responded to the issues of their time.
right,
Absolutely.
right, exactly.
So,
So excited about this one.
yeah.
Lizzie is a really cool character, and I'm almost done with the first draft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Exciting. Yeah, I love
yeah.
it. So good. Well, it was a real pleasure working with you on this book. As I say, like I really enjoyed reading it, and I feel like the changes you've made has made it stronger. So everyone can go and grab their copy of the Dictograph Case, and it's on Amazon, right? You can get it on Amazon,
Yes, it is.
and it's
Yep. Mhm.
Diane Shotton, Shotton. And thanks so much for talking to me about it today, Diane. It's great to see you.
Thanks so much, Rhonda. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for hanging out with me today and for listening all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Resilient Writers Radio Show. While you're here, I would really appreciate it if you'd consider leaving a rating and review of the show. You can do that in whatever app you're using to listen to the show right now, and it just takes a few minutes. Your ratings and reviews tell the podcast algorithm gods that yes, this is a great show. Definitely recommend it to other writers. And that will help us reach new listeners who might need a boost in their writing lives today as well. So please take a moment and leave a review. I'd really appreciate it, and I promise to read every single one. Thank you so much.